I don't disagree, but I think the document on Garter Lane is wonderful. And the guy that did it really didn't settle for the usual old opened in, thanks to the city manager, thanks to the Arts Council. He actually gave some of the facts and he actually made it interesting. But I noticed this morning it's gone. So maybe it's going for a reprint or whatever. It was a fine piece of work, but things like that, I mean, why would Michael Doody and his like admit that an organisation like the Waterford Arts for All Project would lobby and campaign to open an art centre when they have to have the credit, they have to have the glory, and that becomes part of the official record? I mean, you'd be hard pushed in history terms to find reference to Waterford Arts for All Project, except in the guy in Derry. What's his name? His father was fought in Spain, the Civil War in Spain. O'Connor. Emmett O'Connor. He's the only guy, if you like, of the historical writers who has seriously mentioned Arts for All in any way. You know what I mean?
And can you tell me about your own, how did you get involved in that?
How did I get involved? It's a very good question. I was probably hanging into lots of things. I was involved in doing plays with Arts for All. I was probably involved in general sort of things were going on. When Arts for All started, and Arts for All kind of started out of a combat poverty. As I understand it, it came out of combat poverty with Miles Shelley and a Galway chap, Martin Keneally, whom I met recently in Garter Lane when he came down to hear Jim Nolan and Jim's daughter talk about something at a festival, you know. And it was the right thing at the right time. I was probably beginning around the late 70s, early 80s. I mean, Garter Lane opened about 84, I think. So Arts for All was, Waterford Arts for All project began sometime in 78. But there was like-minded people. Anya O'Brien was doing photographs. People who became music moves were doing music. People like you were interested in youth theatre, publishing a newspaper, for example, because there wasn't a newspaper. And we didn't actually understand that it was difficult to do it. And nobody was looking for employment. That wasn't an issue anymore. There was nobody worrying about mindfulness. There was nobody worrying about a safe environment. Like, I meet people, I can't go to that meeting now because I don't think it's a safe environment. Since when did the arts become a safe environment? You have to climb over somebody else and say, I think, I want, and if that made you a pain in the arse or it made you an ego tripper, that's the process, wasn't it? How are you going to get people to recognise the work you're doing if you don't get up and soapbox it and say? And I was writing poetry and I wanted to be famous, and I felt I should be involved in this. But it wasn't a great master plan. I genuinely wanted to be involved because I met Barry Phillips recently, again at the opening night of the Red Iron. He had funded it and he's living in Northern Ireland. And he came all the way down to attend the opening. And I remember doing song and story time with Barry, Tony Hennessy, and different people in the libraries. And we thought it would continue on. So when we stopped doing it stopped happening, which is just so sad. Waterford Arts for All project theatre company going around to housing estates started roughly the same way. Like-minded people, Tony Hennessy, Ben Hennessy, Jim Nolan, Claude Walsh, and Farrell was writing for it, different people. And then you were going to, there was a play called Billy Button and the Magic Belly Button that Jim Nolan played a part in. And Jim Nolan actually swore to a child. The child said, are you old? He was playing Billy Button. Are you old? And Jim said, I'm feckin' ancient, or worse. And that's lived into the legend because I remember we opened in Rice Park, and I was living in Rice Park, and I directed the piece, but I didn't go to the opening night because the cast to be saying you're giving out to us. And you know the way when you direct, you probably are giving out, this has to be better, this has to be faster, or whatever, you know what I mean? Or I need more character, or be bigger, or whatever it is you're looking for. And we asked the corporation to cut the grass, and the corporation cut the grass but didn't take it away. And the cast got bazzed with big chunks of grass. It was the most mad kind of thing that we learned as we went along. Who's taking theatre to housing estates now? You know, God, you'd have to have health and safety regulations. You'd have to have minders. You'd probably have to have a security company pushing children back and all the rest of it. You know what I mean? And you'd probably have warning that the cast shouldn't be drinking soft drinks that had sugar in them, and no way were to be eating crisps, and that the dress would have to be whatever, you know. Just different times.
And then out of that Arts for All Theatre Government, emerged Red Kettle.
Yes. Yeah, but Red Kettle also probably emerged out of other things that were going on. Like, people who wanted to do plays did plays. I directed a Dario Fo in Garter Lane for Arts for All in the very early days. And Owen Ronayne did the poster, and Owen Ronayne did the publicity. Just, people came along. TV Onan came along. He was teaching in the tech. And there was less ego. You know, I know that there has to be ego to create. But people wanted to be involved. Now, maybe that's because Waterford wasn't a wonderful place. People wanted to be involved, and we were. And you either made it happen or you didn't. And I remember meeting the arts. I was a group of people who met the arts. I don't want to give the impression that it's me. Sometimes you ask me a question, I answer it from my point of view. But I remember Adrian Manelli was the director of the Arts Council, and he agreed to come to Waterford to meet during an Arts for All festival, right? And we said, we'll bring him to the Munster, we'll get him lunch. And now, lads, we can't be buying drink, right? It's okay, we'll get him a drink. And when we turned up in the Munster, there were too many of us. And I was the idiot. I had a day job. I was ordering the drink. Now, I have to say, Adrian Manelli knew how cash-strapped we were. He took out a credit card, which is the first time in my life, about 1978 or whatever it was, to pay for the drink in the Munster. And the Munster couldn't handle it. Couldn't handle a credit card from a guy from the Arts Council. And Knox Brennan, who was what's the TD? He was a councillor in Waterford. He came in with this and paid for all the drink and handed Manelli back his credit card. It was just absolutely mad. And he never Brennan didn't make a political issue of it. He didn't say vote for Labour or anything else. It was just the way it was. People came along and did things. We did an art exhibition because I did actually 2 pieces of work for the art exhibition. But if we didn't, it wouldn't get done. You know, that kind of way. And we begged, borrowed, pleaded, and just did what we... But there was the sense that we thought that every town in Ireland should be doing these kind of things. But the same way as we had writers' workshops and different things, because we believed that how are writers going to get together if they don't have a workshop? How are young bands going to get together if there isn't a focal point? I remember someone like you getting me to be the secretary for Music Moves and meeting these people in Jeffson looking at me. He's not a muso head, you know what I mean? And I wasn't. But I was writing the letters to the various organisations and enjoyed it. I had a typewriter, you know.
That attitude is Waterford of Waterford people doing it.
Yes.
Well, I mean, obviously someone like Ted Regan was very important. But also people like Martin Community. You mentioned Martin Community. Martin believed that, the arts should be for all people.
Yes. And I would still believe that today. If I know I blow with the wind and you kind of get cynical as you get older, I still believe that arts has to be for everybody. And if I like the City Council, or Waterford County and City Council as is now, that they're spending more than 4 million on libraries. You know, sometimes artists tell me, it shouldn't be that way. If you don't give young people literature, don't give them writing, a chance to sit and borrow a book and read something, that's how it starts. And, you know, I mean, it was that kind of time when theatre was starting, when there was people going out and doing things. We were doing theatre in pubs. I remember doing a Yeats play with Jim Nolan on my back as a blind man. No, I was the blind man, and Jim Nolan was the guy who could see, or vice versa. You know, I mean, we thought that everyone was doing Yeats plays. They weren't. We did the Cat and the Moon at one of the in Gartlin before it opened, over in the place up the steps, because we had a musician, Liam Liam Kavanagh, could play the fiddle, so he played the fiddle in it, and we found the play. It turned out that we might have been the only group outside of Kiltartan and the universities in Dublin who'd ever done the play. We didn't know that, but it didn't actually stop us. It was just a different time, and it went on. And once the art centre opened, it kind of faded away in a way.
On that subject, I mean, obviously, one of the things for Arts for All was campaigning to get an art centre.
Yes.
But then when it opened, everything changed.
Yeah, but that's the nature of it. Nothing is meant to keep going forever. Now, sometimes organisations have to have somebody at the helm for a long time because that's the only thing that unites. It's the glue that holds other people together. But in general, committees now are such a way that they have to collapse after 3 years or have to change, resign in rota and all those kind of things. Is that a good thing? Look at the FAI and you'd say, well, probably it isn't a good thing because the guys in suits carry on the same kind of expenses, etc., 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 and you've probably fired out the expertise by getting rid of it. But the minister insisting everybody has to go. But 1, 2, 3 of those people were the lifeblood of that organisation in their own quiet way, who could go down to Kerry, go up to Donegal, get respect, organise funding and whatever. But nationally there's a big hoo-ha about it, and good things get dumped.
But just go back to the Arts for All at the time when it was growing. One of the most important things was the fact that it had an insurance policy.
Yes.
Because you couldn't do anything without having insurance.
Yeah.
So everybody could then use this insurance policy.
Yeah.
I think it was really interesting.
I mean, when you spoke to the Arts Council, there was a guy called Brannock. He was Porrig something, is it? Yeah. No, Lar Cassidy. Lar Cassidy was a wonderful man who went out and he embraced that sense of arts for all. People should be doing things because that was part of socialism in Europe and stuff like that, that you must get down to the grassroots. And he would say you must have insurance for your own sake, you know what I mean? And it was possible to do it. Today I meet young artists who are applying for a bit of funding and they're told beforehand they must have their insurance organised. That's health and safety and belt and braces organisation and apparatchiks and all that gone crazy. What Ireland possibly spends more money on administration than it does on arts. I mean, who contacts me about plays and stuff like that? It's usually an administrator or a media person. Someone rings, hello, I'm the media person for, I'm the this for that, I'm, an influencer, I'm a this, I'm a that, and whatever, you know. It's gone a lot. Organisations survive because of doers, not organisers or lining up ducks in a row.
And then what would you see as the what's the word for it? Not the inheritance, but the remnants of Arts for All today? Would you see Waterford having traces of that organisation?
Oh, it does. I mean, Anya O'Brien is still a go-to person for lots of things, right? Liam Rellis is working in some areas. People who are working in Spree, people who are working in Little Red Kettle, artists like Ben Hennessy, all those people. Jim Nolan came out of Waterford Arts for All project in the very early stages. And it should be that way, you know what I mean? I won't say I'm as enthusiastic as I was, but I'm enthused by things and still believe that arts should be for all. And I mean, when I took over doing reviews for the Munster Express, it wasn't looking at youth affairs, it wasn't looking at art affairs, it wasn't looking at children's affairs. It didn't go on. The world has changed, I suppose. There's more theatre schools now than there was then. But people who were involved in Arts for All were of their time and of their place. And many of those people brought it with them in different ways. It's the same, a child joins Waterford Arts for All project or joins Waterford Youth Arts. And They may never go into a play again, but they probably bring their kids to plays. Or they put their hand in their pocket someday and they buy somebody's book, they buy somebody's thing, or they support something, or they take part in a funded campaign because they feel that someone should have taken part in a funded for me when they were funders. But people were given £10 notes, 10 bob notes handed to a person, so you would have more of it. There's still goodwill. There's still tremendous goodwill. Maybe it's unfortunate that sometimes with that has come a whole parade of administrators, organisers, politically correct, saying the right thing, going to a politician and politician working it out and doing their best for you or doing best for the county. I don't know.
And just in your job, you've gone to lots of other places like Kilkenny and Cork, whatever. Would you see that there's the same philosophy of access to the arts in other places?
Oh yes, there is. Yeah, it's become very homogenous now. But sometimes, like musical theatre, is significantly different in Waterford because it had a Waterford Opera Festival, a light opera festival. There's a different beat because of guys like Brian Flynn and David Hennessy today and the people who make up WAMA and make up Theatre Box. Cunningham, I can't think of his first name. Jack Cunningham. I'm sorry, I'm not knowing, I wasn't that prepared for this. Like I'd say these things. They have created musical theatre in a way that we didn't have a long time ago. It's the number of parents who are sending their kids to stage schools now, and all the speech and drama and stuff that goes with it. Like I meet people who are sending their kids to WAMA and they're doing violin, they're doing ukulele, as well as doing drama. And eventually they're only doing piano and nothing. They have no intention anymore of being on the stage. But they're meeting the people who are going on the stage. And they're probably better people for it. Sometimes it makes cheeky kids cheekier, but it makes quiet kids outgoing. And that's good. You must give people the opportunity. But sometimes today, we have people setting up a cultural quarter, which is a street and a dog leg in Waterford. And who is taking care of the kid in Ballygunner? Who is taking care of the kid in Ballybeg? Who is taking care of the kid at the back of the shopping centre that's not a shopping centre in Ferrybank? How are they getting access? Kilkenny says we own them, but Kilkenny doesn't offer them any arts. There are disconnects all the time. Does it get any better? Maybe it does. But it's not as easy as it was, because people of my generation, and I'm old, did things from their heart or because they wanted their kids to have something. Today, and maybe rightly so, a guy goes through college or a girl goes through college and she feels she should be making a living from arts. That's why she pursued an arts programme. And that's what the college is telling them. You can be an artist. Stand proud and firm and paint.
And do you think that the arts are more, just on a general question, do you think that the arts is more seen as important now than it was years ago? Or do you think it's...
No, I think they're just kind of dressed up as a nation must have artistic expression like that. Ireland is the greatest place for writers because we have a few Nobel Prizes, and this is striving for excellence stuff, which is a problem really, because it has to counterbalance. It's the old Ted O'Regan argument, if you like. Do you encourage people to be involved in the process and be the better for being involved in the process, or do you have to produce product? Jim Nolan would have been probably part of a process because of the people he worked with. Today, he will only get funding because he has a product, and the funder wants to be on the ship with them. He wants to be there at the glossy opening night and everything else. Well, it's very difficult to get the funder to go into Jeff's or Crokes in Tramore and see a play being done at a table and saying, I'll put $5,000 into that. That's the difference sometimes.
So there's a lot of lip service paid to the arts and so on.
Oh yes, like ministers again reiterating that by 2025 there's going to be twice the amount of money spent on the arts. That would only bring it back up to the things they promised back pre-2010. Ministers have short memories. And the Arts Council is probably spending more money on its own structures and organisations and employees and committees and subcommittees and all of that. Why would the arts need that?
And then I suppose the other thing too about campaigning for an arts centre in Waterford is that, I mean, obviously the council gave the buildings and the Arts Council can give some money,
Yeah.
but staff, the staff and all that they rely on CE schemes and stuff like that. I mean, it's like,
CE scheme is still going on today. I mean, but this time every year I have to recontact with people in, say, the various venues. I mean, and I'll be careful what I say about this. There is one major gallery in Waterford now, funded by the Arts Council, funded by the council, and I meet the girl who's running it, going to work Saturday and Sunday in Bosch and Lawn. There are people across the road in Garter Lane who are on similar schemes and are just working so many hours a week, 19 hours a week and whatever. That is a real problem. That we don't start that out. Like this building where we are, it's a pop-up place. The council doesn't own it. I go to Kilkenny and there will be a state-of-the-art Butler Gallery opening behind the library in Kilkenny beside the river. You go to Wexford and Wexford County Council building itself, which is as big as a football stadium, exhibits art along its walls when you go in to pay your motor tax, you're this, you're that, make an inquiry about something else. That's the difference. We're using up buildings nobody else wants to use, and we have this kind of pop-up notion. It's like the building across the road. 5 years have been trying to put people in there, and the area is rotting from the ceiling down now. It does not make sense because we don't have that joined-up thinking. But in Waterford, to be fair to Waterford, Waterford is actually spending more money than Wexford and Kilkenny are across the board. And probably it's leaking funding because of other things, you know?
yeah, I mean, now it's much more political things.
Yes, yeah.
Whereas I suppose when Arts for All started off, it was much more about people's energy and people's creativity.
Yes. And maybe it's possible we had nothing else to do. I mean, I had young kids. I see photographs of Jim Nolan rehearsals with my son and daughter in the picture, because if I didn't mind them, who else was going to mind them, you know what I mean? And they kind of grew up saying, oh no, you know what I mean? We grew up listening to people rehearsing in the house. We grew up listening to poets coming by and going to things and that. Why would they want? They have different lives. But they still go to things, but sometimes they might ring me up to bring us. We're going to see a play.
They got drowned in the arts.
Yes, so, I mean, it's like Margaret and I took the kids to everything. Dancing, music lessons, all the things we felt that people should have access to. But I honestly must have realised I had to be earning a living to do that, and I did. But at the same time, I could spend as much time as I wanted. I was involved in just lots of things because I wanted to be involved. But I probably didn't want to make a living from it. That's the difference. I meet very young people now who want to make a living and are annoyed and upset because they can't make a living from it, and they think it's another generation that's holding them back. And that's a worry, you know what I mean? That is a worry.
And when you say they think there's another generation holding back, what's that?
Well, I mean, if somebody said to me, you're old, my commentary to them, they think I'm saying, well, you should be doing what we did in the past. I don't mean that at all. But you have to get up and promote yourself. You actually have to get out and sell what you're doing. I mean, I meet people sometimes would say, you never came to me reading. And I'd say, but I did not know about your reading, did I? Yeah, but you wrote for a paper, you should know, you know what I mean? Why would they think that? Or it was on Facebook. Facebook is not a media invitation. It isn't. Like, people tell me I haven't reviewed their book. But I never got the book in the first place. And then they give out about me on Messenger, you know what I mean? Tell me, you know what I mean? If you look at my diary is so far forward sometimes. And I hate being so far forward. But I have to know what I'm doing. I have to plan as well. And sometimes people have to plan their attack on the system. If they want to be heard, they have to polish up their voice these days. They have to make sure they're offending nobody.
And so do you think that we say generally in the arts these days that there's not enough attention paid to promotion of yourself and even the financial side?
Yes, you have to. You can't be sort of being... Okay, there's a sense of artists living in a garret, and artists sometimes need to be protected, and they need to be hugged occasionally. But so does everybody. The guy carrying the flat would like a hug occasionally, but people think, no, I'm out in front and I'm doing bows and everything else, you know. And hey, I mean, when I was in the panto and I had the small, I couldn't sing or dance in the panto. I was in the panto, and I used to think that these people loved me. I was only in the panto because I was the villain, and I was on the committee in the Theatre Royal. We could rehearse longer. Lee Murphy won't be fired out. He has a key to the premises. It's just daft. But I remember being involved in plays. When I was involved in WDS, I used to paint scenery, build scenery, load the van, carry down the set, put up the set. And some of the people who were bankers and business people would arrive to put on their costume and go into the play. I remember a well-known Waterford figure calling me aside one day saying, that set's not right. And I stuck a hammer in it. And I said, you sort it. I'm going home to the children. Crazy stuff. And then I'd have a committee meeting because your attitude was wrong.
Is that your take for granted?
Sorry, I don't mind. I wouldn't mind being taken for granted because as a parent today, I'm probably taken for granted. But I also take other people for granted. Jesus, that's the kind of people we are, you know.
So, to finish off, anything about the arts, which would say about where do you think it's going?
I think that more should be. I'm not saying that the council should be putting more money. I don't mean that. They should be putting more money in. But they do spread it as well as they can. But sometimes they keep funding the same people for too long. And that is a problem. They have to get out and be more proactive. I see the same companies being funded all the time. But that's the same in the Arts Council. Let's give it to Druid. Let's give it to the Gate. And there's really nobody saying, let's take a risk on the guy who is almost inarticulate and he has a play in his hand and the play isn't well written, it isn't typed up the way it should, but he's angry or she's angry and she wants to put on a play and she's persuaded 4 and 5 of her friends to be in it. Arts officers, and Waterford is blessed apparently with 2. They should be out there proactive and saying to the guy sitting behind the camera, I have something that might interest you. Instead, we have a complicated procedure to make application. Part of the process means you have to apply to Waterford City Council, Waterford City and County, Waterford Council, right? To apply to them, you have to say that you've read the arts plan. I reread the arts plan over Christmas. It bears no resemblance, really. It's talking about all the checks and balances they have and the reviews and everything. We're halfway through it. The plans for the cultural quarter haven't been reviewed. They're promising a tattooist in a building. They're promising a dentist in a building. How did these things get into a plan? And if you look at the Three Sisters and the plans of revitalising railway stations, come on. Or look at Galway at the moment, trying to sneak an application to Galway City Council, not even County Council, Galway City Council, to get 2 million extra to keep going the projects that they say they're doing. Who'd believe it? It's a cock-up in the brewery, only there's no brewery anymore. You must go out and find artists. The same way as I went across this morning to Garter Lane to review work that seems student-like. There's nothing tells me what it's about, etc., 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 etc. I would probably say I loved one piece of it. Really loved it because it's got dark fucking clouds hanging out of the heavens. I don't even know what that artist's name is. It's in the book. I would probably say that picked me up and made me feel good. And hopefully that person, young girl I presume, will say that that's a good review, etc., 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 and go to somebody else and get a few bob because of it. But that person who put that clouds and bits of metal and everything up never invited me to see her work. The institution that she's apparently a student of and that I worked for over 20-something years never invited me to see their work. And that's not me being mingy or small-minded. But if you don't tell people what you're doing, how the fuck are they going to know what you're doing? And the officials who run all these things, it should be mandatory that they go to events and go and see what people are doing and take a risk of funding somebody that's never funded before. Find someone that's worth taking a risk on and see what happens.
Absolutely.
You know?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.